All right, welcome to the show today. I'm with my good friend and GQ Man of the Year, Gregarious Narain. Say hello, Greg.
Hello, everybody. How are you out there?
Oh, well, hopefully they're doing great. So, Greg, it's been several years since we caught up. Man,
Been a while.
you're a Renaissance man, San Francisco, many startups, recently moved to Denver. Tell us about what the last decade has been like for you, briefly.
The last decade, let's see. It's been an interesting journey. The last year, my last startup, which was a YC company, was acquired by a private equity company. So that was probably one of the larger changes. But I'd actually retired from there a couple of years ago, actually, before
Mm-hmm.
that. And was busy. I've been doing innovation work actually, so helping large companies sort of understand how to operate more like a startup, give them some insight to the startup ecosystem. Um, Probably the big move, the one you alluded to, is we decided to leave the Bay Area after 12 years living in San Francisco. Now with a 4-year-old, and so made our way out to Denver. That's been I think, a very welcome change, an important change in our lives. I love it here. It's been great so far. Um, and I think the big learning for me, or the big change for me, and we were sort of loosely talking about this before, was just I think I've made a transition away from defining myself as a founder and sort of like reclaiming my life and sort of trying to be the things and the person I want to be, where for the last 25 years as an entrepreneur, like my identity was entirely and fundamentally commingled and replicated with my startup itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has been the biggest, boldest mind shift sort of that I've made in the last several years. I've been tapering my way down towards this, but I think now I spend most of my time helping other founders and other startups, more by sharing my experience and ultimately trying to help them get off of sort of the edge of the saw, right? Like on a
Yeah.
daily basis. And that's what I've been enjoying the most, as of late.
So, that's a 25 years you're in the grind,
Yeah.
and you're eating, sleeping, breathing your company. You're for much of that time you're in the Bay Area, which is as everybody knows, the epicenter of that
Yeah.
lifestyle. And you're just kind of like, I'm ready for a change. I'm ready for a switch. So Denver is it's a very different culture, but it's growing and kind of has its metropolitan feel. And you became a father, and that tell me what that means to you, being a father in a new city with this new opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself, right?
Yeah. So, number one, being a father, I think, is the most important thing in my life, right? And I will say this it is weird because it is important in a number of ways, right? So, and it's like depending on the edge of the spoon you're looking at it from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it is important for me, like, one, because my son is like the center of my life. It means everything to me. And so there's this, there's that saying that's sort of like, having a child is like sort of having your heart live outside of you, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so there's that sort of aspect of it, of like me wanting to create this perfect world for this little person, right? And like pave the path for whatever opportunities I can help him achieve, and et cetera, in life. And that means everything to me. But there's this other thing that I think is really interesting that has happened. And it is the part, the other end of the spoon, which is really the me having a chance to reflect on, I guess, like the relationship I had with my own father, and in a lot of ways to correct, or encapsulate what I idealize as what a good father is.
Right.
And
Right.
I think like there's this like self-reflection in the process of like analyzing what I went through, what I felt, or what I experienced, and then trying to do that, trying to not make the mistakes that I feel like my dad may have made, inadvertent, intentional or inadvertent, right? Like it's kind of I mean it with as little judgment as possible, but the reality is there's a state that I believe I had with my dad, and it's not that I want to be the polar opposite per se of it, right? It's just that I know that I have this idealized state of what I want to be as well, right?
Well, and you don't know what you don't know until you become a parent, right?
Oh, you're just like, I'm never going to do that. And you find yourself doing exactly the same thing, and you're like, shit.
Yeah, you're just arguing with a smaller version of yourself. That's all you're doing.
and more powerful version.
Yeah.
So yeah, that has been interesting. And I have a dad blog, I guess, or I don't know what to call it. My site, Letters to Solomon.
Yep.
And we write letters to, Maria and I both write letters occasionally to our son. And that was an important part of the lesson of me, like that journey for myself, actually, in capturing who I am and what those things that are happening to him mean to me. That's where I've been putting those thoughts and those memories there.
Yeah, I've read a few of those, and dude, they're just so heartfelt and meaningful. And part of me is like, Greg, will you be my dad? Just the love that you're putting into words about your son, and even when he was a baby. I mean, I remember the first couple of them. It's like he was barely a few days old or a few weeks old, and you're just gushing. And that's going to be such a treasure to him when he gets older, to be able to look back and read
I hope
those.
So. I hope so. It's hard to tell with kids these days.
Oh, quick sidebar. We went through this last night where our youngest was a little upset about something, and it comes out. He's almost 6, but it comes out. He kind of gives mom, gives Sally the stink eye, and like, I wish you weren't my mom.
Oh God,
I don't like you. And
Yeah.
Sally like literally looked at me, and like her lips started quivering, and a little tear came out of her eye, and I'm like, oh no. And so we talked about it later. I'm like, honey, you okay? And she's like, that just stung. Wow. I'm like, he doesn't mean it, and da-da-da. These are big feelings in a small body. But boy, parenting is a roller coaster sometimes.
My background's like engineering, right? So like when I think about kids, I think about them like as a device, right? Almost.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like pure input for a long time, right? Like with zero feedback in the loop, right? And then, like you get some reward for it, and then suddenly makes a turn for the worse. You're like, all my tests are failing. What happened here, right?
Oh yeah, but people aren't code. You can't debug them, right?
No, you cannot. You cannot very readily, right? So it is a complicated thing with children, but you learn a lot about yourself having a kid, right?
You certainly do. I've softened so many bad habits and hopefully eliminated more.
Yeah.
And learning to really kind of reflect on my actions and my effect on people. Like empathy. Like I think having kids taught me empathy, which I was probably lacking for a large part of my life. So, Denver.
Yes.
For everybody, there's been kind of this San Francisco flight. Austin, Seattle, Portland, Denver. Give us the lowdown on the tech scene in Denver and how it may be better or different than San Francisco.
So Denver's like the third most popular place that people leave San Francisco to come to, apparently, from what I saw a study on this. So I'll tell you a few things. I mean, I haven't been here long, but I'll tell you what I've learned. Denver reminds me of San Francisco when I first moved to San Francisco. So go back to, what is that, 2006-ish, right? And if anyone remembers back then, there's a lot of like very similar like things about these two, right? Like, so Boulder is like is sort of like Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
right. There's
Palo
like
Alto or something.
Education center. It even looks like Palo Alto when you go there, right? Mm-hmm. It's got sort of some VCs and investors are all situated there. It's a startup town. It's a small town. And then there's this city next to it, right? And so back then it was San Francisco, and no one wanted to be in San Francisco. Like I remember when I first moved to the Bay, you'd have to go down to Palo Alto or Mountain View or something like every 2-3 times a week for some event or something that was going on. And eventually that gave way, and everyone was in the city. right? And then only like really large companies, and still the VCs stayed. But even now, all the VCs are in the city. And I feel like that's exactly like the kind of geographic sort of similarity that we have in Denver, right? Like where Boulder is is an educational hub, but we have a lot of education in the city here as well. But that's the stalwart sort of existing culture, but it's small. It can't fit more people. And so you see people moving into the city more and more, right? There's 50 co-working spaces, 50 brands of co-working spaces in Denver.
Wow.
Right. Which is crazy when you think about it. Right. And there is a ton of entrepreneurship. There's a ton of startup activity, and more and more of it, I think, is happening in the city itself. Right. So I think that's part of what I like about it. Right. Is that I'm not disconnected from the startup ecosystem or startup life. I still love that. Right. I just don't identify myself as it purely. Right.
Yep.
And then the second thing that I find interesting and just important to me, I guess, and increasingly I think to more people, is I would say this whole notion of life work balance, as I like to call it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any like laziness or any nonsense like that. But what I do think is there's more of an aspiration here for having that balance right now. Look, startup life is crappy sometimes. Startup life is all in, and sometimes it does require like tons of sacrifice and not a very balanced, system of living. Right. I get that. Right. But I do feel like people try to have a life outside of like their startups here. Right. Because we have access to like all kinds of nature, right. All kinds of outdoor things to do. I live in a suburb, which is, it's not a suburb. I don't even know what to call it. It's like, it's still in Denver, but it's like, a neighborhood, but it's like a whole city unto itself. Right.
Are you on east or west side of town or south?
I live in Stapleton. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Denver is west of me. So I'm like kind of over here from the city. I'm in between the airport and downtown. Right. And, and so where I live, is a very family oriented place. Like everyone on our block has a kid, basically. There's playgrounds in every neighborhood. And that's just something like you couldn't even have in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, like the guy across the street from me is like, a developer, and the person over there like is the CRO of a startup. Right. And so there's still like startup people and there's startup hubs in every one of these surrounding areas. But, people still have a life. And I think that's like that means everything to me at this point.
They have a sense of like protectionism for that life part of the balance.
They try. I think, like I said, it's not a perfect science, and you don't get it right all the time, right? But I feel like there's more of it. When I talk to people and they're like, well, what was San Francisco like? And I always say like, well, you're either a founder or an employee.
That's a very binary tree there, right?
It is though, right? I mean, and that was my sphere of the world, right? Like, but like I either dealt with, founders, employees, or VCs, right? And it was sort of like, you're one of those three, right? Like,
so Denver's allowing you the opportunity to kind of get a little bit of that balance back and spend time, learning to be a father. That's what I tell my kids all the time, is that, just like you're learning to grow up, I'm learning to be a dad. So we're kind of in this together.
Fair trade.
But it sounds like it's given you some opportunity, you said, to kind of like shed that one size fits all suit of being a founder. Kind of you're pigeonholed a little bit in that sense of identity. So what sort of things are you doing now that maybe you weren't able to do in the past that you feel more free to explore?
So we were talking about this a little bit. So when I moved out here, I sort of said, well, I'm going to a new place. I don't have a job, right? Like, so, and I'm like, and I have all these other interests, and I'm like, I could be whoever I want to be when I get here. Mm-hmm. And so, being in a new place, I'm not being someone I'm not. I'm actually just being more of who I was, right? Like, and so, I've always been interested in style and fashion. And so like I started like an influence on my Instagram account, started doing like daily fashion and whatnot, right? Like I'm not into like high fashion stuff. Like I like that stuff personally, but like I'm actually more interested in making more people comfortable in developing their own style, right?
Yeah.
And so that was like one thread that I was able to pull and sort of start to do. And I was doing that in San Francisco. I just never talked about it. And when I got here, I was like, well, I have a routine. I drop my son off, I take my picture, I come home, I share my picture, right? Like,
Yeah.
for school in the morning, right? Like,
And
it's
your
my little
gram is off the chain, dude. I'm telling
Thanks,
you.
man. And then, so that was one thing. And then another thing is I started to like continue to invest in sort of my health and my fitness. And when I got here, I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but I was on YouTube. I'd always watch when I had my son. I never watched YouTube at all, right, until I had my kid. And then I was like, man, we're up all night. I'm like, what am I going to watch now? I'm like, oh, I'm just like dying, sitting there in a chair, rocking chair. I'm like, I need something to watch. So I started watching YouTube, subscribing, and I've always been into fitness and working out and whatnot, like 25 years as well. And I ended up following a bunch of these people. And then one guy who I followed for years, young kid, he's like 25 or 30, I don't know how old he is, right? He always did this contest every summer to like see who could transform their body the most, right? Like a weight loss challenge thing. And I'm like, and I got here and it was like after South by Southwest, I got back and I'm like, why am I watching this? I was like, why don't I just do this? Right. So it was an online contest. You paid $20 to enter, and I entered. And, so I started, if you look at my Instagram, like half of it is like style and fashion stuff, and the other half is like fitness and whatnot. And so I entered this weight loss transformation thing, and I lost 14 pounds in 112 days. I went from like 20% body fat to 10% body fat. And that, gave me a little taste of it. And I loved giving myself that physical and mental challenge, like this thing that was like, seemed really hard. And it was hard, but I think it was hard because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so now, interestingly enough, now I have like a Facebook group, like where I'm helping motivate and drive more of my friends towards their own fitness. Like I started it like actually a few days ago. We have like 20 plus members already. And I'm coaching more and more people. Like I've been coaching a bunch of my kids' teachers at school on like their own weight loss journey. And I've decided to enter my first bodybuilding contest.
Oh, nice.
December.
Nice.
Yeah. So, so that'll be, I literally like will have to do the tanning, the shaving. I just came from posing practice, which is why I was a little late.
All right. Give us a pose real quick.
I suck at it. So there's no point in it.
Okay.
It's like totally horrific. And you will be amazed at like all the things you have to learn. Like, that's what I love about it. And it is the scariest thing you can imagine. So investing in my health, my nutrition, like for that last 112 days, like that I trained the first time, I cooked almost all my meals. It was fun learning all these different hacks about how to like fit the right macronutrients into like a meal and have it taste still good and all that stuff, right?
The diet and the nutrition is a huge part of it.
People don't understand. Honestly, like the working out it's not that important. It's important. Like I would say, like, if I always tell people, if you're trying to lose weight, the working out doesn't matter, right? Like it's all diet, right? Like really, if you want to lose weight, fix your diet, everything else will be fine, right? Everyone has muscles underneath. If you get that thin, they'll show up, right?
Yeah.
Then you can improve it and make it better. But the reality is you don't need any of that. You don't need to worry about any of that. So it's been like working out 6-7 days a week. I go to the gym now, like usually like 3:30, 4 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. But I do that because, like I've got a busy day. Like I try to manage to drop off in the morning for our son. And so at 3:30 I leave. I'm at the gym by 4. I work out for an hour. I'm not doing cardio right now, but when I do cardio for 30 to 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get in the sauna almost every day. Which is great. Like we didn't have a sauna in San Francisco, and 2, I've always loved it. It's been my favorite thing. And now having access to that, like at a gym that costs $20 a month, is amazing.
I do drop off too in the mornings, and I think that's such a great little part of the routine of my day is, we're both up getting the house going and breakfast and clothing and toothbrushes and all those things. But that, it's a short drive, that 12 minutes with just me and the 2 boys in the back. And sometimes it's quiet and we're just listening to music. And sometimes, like this morning, they're just going at it. And, it's like I cherish it every day. And then, that little kind of, it's like a social hour at school, meeting all the other dads and the other moms. And, as we walk into class.
It's interesting because now I live in a suburb, right? And I used to live in a city. And the routines are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think they're equally important, right? Like, before I had to drop my kid off, but it was just like stressful, right? Like when I
Yeah.
was in the city, it was like driving through traffic and like, hustling. Oh, where are we going to park the car? And like all this, there was just as much BS associated with the drop off as there was like the good part about it, right?
Yeah.
And now it's just mostly the good part,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I think that's like, that's what I just like. Again, it's those things are what I love, But yes, by the time he's at school at 8:30, I've been up for 5 hours,
Wow.
done a bunch of stuff already.
Hey, I wanna go back to something you said that I thought was
Yeah.
interesting. You paid $20 to be in an online contest with.
Yep.
I think, like, if you think about product pricing and marketing and promotion, that $20 puts your skin in the game, and that makes you now accountable. And I just I just wanted to note that how interesting I thought that was, that you paid $20 to do this yourself.
I did. Absolutely. You're raising an interesting thing. Like, so, the thing that I think a lot of people get wrong, right? Product people, software people, startup people, is that they fundamentally don't understand the customer and what's valuable to them. And so most startups start with a technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or AKA a solution, and then try to find the people that fits, right? And that's like the opposite way of how it should be. And I'm not talking about like lean and all that nonsense, right? I'm talking about really understanding what's valuable. And so that thing, like that $20, right, represents like the right kind of motivation. It understands like what I'm after.
Mm-hmm.
And it understands that's sort of the way to create the stake in it, right? Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, the $20 was nothing. Mm-hmm. Now I have all these friends that I met on Instagram that were all like, that I didn't know. Like, these are people like, I mean, I know like 20-year-old kids in the Netherlands, and I know like 50-year-old men like in in Phoenix, right? Like, mm-hmm. And I'm just connected to these other people who are part of this shared experience. And that is what I remember and take away from it more than, like anything else, right? The last week was totally horrible, right? Like 1,100 calories a day, not eating any carbs. Like, I'll never forget that week again in my life, right? Like, so terrible, right? But having those other people to be like, how are you doing today, right? Like, yeah. Like that $20 was to make those friends. It wasn't for anything else, as far as I'm concerned.
You paid money to, quote, do that to yourself, to put yourself through the grind. But then also to expose yourself to a new community and some new lifestyle ways of living, and that's pretty neat. And I think it's the whole going back to business, the freemium model of things, and the way some of the SaaS is priced. Just putting a little skin in the game will commit your customer sometimes much more. But as you say, you got to do it in such a way that it resonates with them. Then, some other kind of half-brained idea where it's just like, we'll throw it against the wall and let them use it for free.
Yeah, well, half these freemium things, right? Like, until you pay, and you pay enough for it, you don't value it, right? Yep. There's this great book that I've been reading this with everybody. I've like got a book club now. I get everybody to read this book. Russell Brunson?
I do now.
Yeah, so he's the guy who created ClickFunnels. This book's called Expert Secrets. It's amazing. I recommend it to anybody who basically has to sell anything. And one of the things he says in there, he's like, if you can't be the cheapest, be the most expensive.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. God, you hit it. You hit it.
And so if you cannot be the cheapest, then figure out how to justify being the most expensive. Right?
You just called out our business model right there, because we started this or created this kind of narrow channel. VC came in, there's huge players, the channel got big, dominated, saturated, and it's like, what the hell am I going to do? All right. Yeah. Now, what do you know? We're the most expensive option, and we do everything in our power to justify it.
But you justify it, and people understand it, and they know what they're getting, and they don't come unless they're serious, right? And all of that is all that matters.
And it's been able to, keep us. That's essentially how we survived, right? Because without a burn rate and a B round, we would have been dead a long time ago. So as a revenue funded company, that was the avenue that worked for us, and hopefully, maybe anybody listening will work for them as well. So you had San Francisco, you moved to Denver, you got into some new clubs with your bodybuilding, you're experimenting with this influencer thing, and I gotta say though, your fashion, man, it's too hot in the desert for me to rock one of your three-piece suits.
I showed you that jacket you had on the other day. I told you to get that one. Come on.
I was actually in San Diego, and that's weather appropriate. But, in Tucson and Phoenix, you're not wearing a wool suit.
Okay, this suit here is from Uniqlo. You could buy the whole thing for like $60, and it's the thinnest material. You can wash it in Washington.
All right. See, I'll have to follow closer, but
that's my point, right? Like, you can always do it. Like, hey, I remember when you used to be mostly a t-shirt guy. So.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And there's many days you'll catch me in a t-shirt still.
Nothing
but
wrong with that.
I'm a man of a certain age now. I'm past 40. I'm 41 now. I got 2 kids. I kind of got to look the part, I guess. So the influencer thing you mentioned in our pre-show.
Yeah.
That's for kind of a reason. Because what are you working now on professionally? What's keeping you busy?
It is. And so, I actually don't talk about this too much yet, but, happy to share it here. So I'm building my 3rd company now, it's not my 3rd. I built 14 companies already, but
Okay. That's a delta. It's not my 3rd. It's my 14th.
I'll say my next. Okay.
Next. Okay.
So I have a new company. It's called Fanabulous.
Nice.
And it is a CRM and marketing automation platform for influencers.
Okay.
So the best way to think about what we're doing is we're building a CRM for your followers. Because, basically, increasingly, the way we see the world is that we're not living in that classic prospect, customer, advocate sort of funnel anymore. When we imagine the world, we imagine it as followers, fans, prospects, customers, advocates, and then fanatics, right? Mm-hmm. And so this whole social realm that now has encapsulated most businesses, we think there's a ton of opportunity for businesses going forward to leverage and work with and partner with their customers in increasingly scalable ways, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that, if you're a Nike, let's say, and you've got 20 million followers out there on your Instagram, how many of them have you attached like a customer record to, right? Like 1 million, 2 million, right?
Or maybe even fewer because of the walled garden. You don't necessarily have access to Facebook's data or
so
Twitter's
we're creating
data.
a whole new CRM for all the people you wouldn't put in your CRM, right? And so we're building a system like that. Now, the reason I started, I do everything with the double meaning, right? And so I don't have time to do things for just one purpose, right? And so when I started doing my Instagram content, part of it was I wanted to do the expressive part. Like I wanted to just create that kind of content. Show dudes like you that, yes, you can wear a suit in 95. Look, it's like 95 degrees out today here, right? I'm still wearing, we can do it. But more importantly, it was what I wanted to do was I also wanted to have that firsthand experience, to your point earlier about like that empathy, about what does an influencer go through to create content? What does it take to gain followers, right? What is it like? What is the workflow like to make content on a regular basis, right? And so I wanted to sort of try and experience that in a more firsthand manner, right? Like to understand sort of what's going on. And as you know, like I do a LinkedIn live show 3 to 4 times a week as well, which you will be a guest of at some point soon. And so that process of producing and sort of like, curating, moderating, creating content, I've just sort of tried to immerse myself in the whole experience to really have a better understanding of what my potential customers go through. Right. And I'm not trying to become an influencer per se, right? Like, I don't care. I don't need brands sending me stuff. I'll take it. Hey, right here. But the goal more is to understand what they go through so I can help them create better solutions for them.
Oh. Yeah, there's that's my wife calling. So there's nothing more appropriate when you're trying to get a business off the ground than understanding the real needs of your customer and what their day looks like and their journey, so that then you can find the pain point that you really need to try to solve.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will give you someone said this to me, and I wish I could remember who it was. I think it was Lindsay Tabus. But I'm pretty sure it was Lindsay Tabus. She's awesome. She's called the Lady Engineer, I think is her. She's a product person, used to be an engineer. But she said this thing, I think it's brilliant. She said that once you're an entrepreneur, you are no longer the user. Right? And I think this is a fundamentally really important bit of advice, right? Is that as much as I am trying to understand the user, it is important to understand that I am not the user, right? And so whatever insights I have really just sort of apply to my perception of this problem. But that is not usually representative of the problem set itself, right? And it may be a thread worth pulling, but you have to verify this and validate it with others. But the second you keep putting your selfish needs above, say, your customer base's needs, you're likely robbing yourself of delivering the opportunity that you're really trying to create.
Right. So you can get close, but you'll never get exact.
You get directionality, right? But you got to always hold yourself separate. Then, no, you're not the user. Now you are a business trying to monetize the opportunity, and that is an entirely different thing, right? Than actually being the user.
Yeah. Wow. So that is a lot to unpack there in terms of, looking at the social media landscape very differently, because, I look at it as, what sort of annoying thing can I say today on Twitter? How can I poke a bear?
We're all users. We're all users of Twitter. We're all users of Instagram. But the second, that's because we're not doing it because our lives depend on it, right? But if you're Nike and you spend $10 million a year on social media, you've got real fundamental business concerns going on that you are trying to map those things to. That activity is all part of a plan. That plan is part of a strategy. That strategy is accountable to deliverables and budgets and other things like that. And our job as the entrepreneur is not now how to make pushing the tweet button easier. It is how to fulfill the broader and higher and fundamental promise of why you're doing it.
Wow. Well, I wish you so much luck in that endeavor. It sounds pretty interesting and exciting. So this would be your next startup. And is there anything else you got going on right now? What's keeping you busy, if there is anything else?
There is. The only other thing I do is, since I became married, remember I said I really like being a dad. I kind of realized I really like being a dad for everybody.
You got a kind of a paternal streak.
I do. I got his big brother paternal kind of thing going on. And so since I've been here, I actually love being a coach and a mentor now as well. And so I do have a consulting practice, coaching practice called Foundercraft. And I sort of offer a model where I help founders. My goal is to ultimately help them achieve that balance, the kind of Zen that I've achieved in my own life.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help them achieve that. But I use a model where we go from consulting. Yeah, here's what I realized is that no matter what, you could be a founder, oh yeah, I know I need to lose weight. I know I need to spend more time with my kids. I know I need to do whatever. But here's what the first thing you're going to tell me, Greg, I know I need to do that, but I can't do it until, right?
Yeah.
And that until part is where I start. And so I start with a consultative model where I actually, being a founder of a bunch of companies, being in every operational role inside of those companies, I'm fine, what's your until? Is your until until this product ships? Okay, great. Let's go look at your roadmap. Let's go look at the features. Let's go look at the UX. Let's get that thing shipped so that we can then move you to the next phase.
Yeah.
That next phase is going to be the mentorship part where I'm great. Now let's give you better skills so you stop having work overflow constantly into your life. Right. And so now it's okay, so here's this product took you 9 months to ship. It should have taken you 3. Let's go look now at what did we do wrong? How did we manage it wrong? What skills were we missing? Let's increase and change those things. And then the last phase of it is coaching, where I'm great, now let's look at your trajectory. Where do you want to be? And not really work so much, but where do you want to be?
Yeah.
in your future, right? And so the idea is, we move from all me to all you, right? Sort of over time.
That, I heard that this is timely. Sally last night told me this story. It's a very sad story. I won't mention any names, but a founder had grinded and grinded. What's the past tense of grind? Groaned. Anyways, they had worked very, very hard, 8-9 years. Finally got the big exit. Was kind of sitting in the boardroom signing the papers. Wife called.
I shared this
son.
story. Yeah. I
Yeah.
talked about this last night, yesterday on my show. Horrific.
Right. So there's no time like right now.
Yeah, it is absolutely exactly the worst, most horrible thing that I imagine too many of us doing to ourselves, right? Like, I say this over and over again, but I feel like there's this very toxic relationship that is developed between us and work.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is like a necessity, right? Like there's always more work to do at a startup than there are people, right?
Yep.
But some of it is this glamorization or glorification of like the hustle itself.
Yeah, I call it hustle porn.
Yeah, totally, right? And like I'm not saying people shouldn't work hard. I'm not saying people should like ignore the work they need to do. I am saying that they have to be mindful of all of the parts of their life and everything they sacrifice to achieve whatever return it is that they want. And that's in anything. You can't like work out all day at the gym either and then ignore everything else, right? Like that's also not a realistic thing. And you also can't spend all your time with your family if you also have to provide for them, right?
Yep.
So this is not an all or nothing thing. And I'm not condemning like startups. I'm condemning this glorification, right? Of what we've gotten to. And there are times where you do have to do all of it or more of it. And there are times where you got to start to say, how do I have a life again to be successful?
So Foundercraft is you kind of mentoring entrepreneurs with trying to help get them over this little hurdle or sidestep the hurdle or what have you to get to having a life.
Exactly. Now, some people come to me and they're like, all right, I raised a round. I have an assistant now. I've hired some people to help me with this, but I'm having trouble with this. And so honestly, like, for example, when I was like doing this training, this body online transformation thing, I didn't share any pictures of my progress. Right. And then at the 90-day mark, I finally was like, oh, wow. I was like, holy crap, I look kind of good. So I shared a picture. And then you would be amazed, Josh. Like, I got like 30 of my friends like that I never knew, like were texting me, emailing me, DMing me, like, hey, can you help me with my nutrition? Can you help me with this? Right. And what I realized was that fitness was actually a thing that a lot of people have on in their head. And it doesn't suffer from what I call the medium problem, right? The medium problem is that like in business, I feel like people feel like they can read an article on Medium and they know how to do it.
Armchair quarterbacking.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But when it comes to your own personal health, like your fitness, they know they need help, they need motivation, they need tips, they need someone to kick their ass, right? Like that stuff, they realize that an external entity is usually better. And so a lot of times people are coming in and they want to start with that kind of help, right? Like, I need help with my health. I need help with my fitness. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a dietitian. What I do is I connect them to like other people who can advise them. But what I provide them is a feedback mechanism. I provide them accountability, and I provide them a way to make it an integrated part of their founder or startup life.
You're that $20.
I'm the $20.
Yeah. That keeps them honest and keeps them committed. That's great. Well, it sounds like you're doing good work on behalf of yourself and your family and helping other people. And Denver settled in well with you. So, it's been so nice to catch up with you, Greg.
Absolutely, man.
Can you please tell everybody where to find you, which is apparently everywhere?
Yeah, no, I'm in a lot of places. The easiest place, the best place, just go to foundercraft.com. If you want to email me, it's gregarious@foundercraft.com. If you want to find me on Instagram, I am at Gregariously, and I am at Gregarious on Twitter as well. And you should definitely follow me on LinkedIn.
Most definitely.
Most definitely, because that's where I produce content 3 times a week. That's where you're going to see Josh next. And so follow me to get notifications when our show goes live.
All right, Greg. Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to get a chance to see you and your family again soon.
Absolutely, man. It's good seeing you again. Bye.
All right. Cheers.